270 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, the environment kills almost instantly. There is no air. The temperature swings violently between freezing and burning, depending on which side faces the sun. And without an atmosphere to filter it, ultraviolet and cosmic radiation rain down with enough force to shred living tissue. In September of 2007, the European Space Agency launched a satellite called Photon M3. On board was an experiment designated TARDIS, designed by Swedish researcher Ingemar Jönsson. The experiment carried 3,000 microscopic passengers, but they were not kept safely inside the pressurized cabin. They were sealed into a small instrument and bolted directly to the outside of the capsule, exposed to the raw vacuum of space for 10 days. When the capsule finally fell back through the atmosphere, Jönsson opened the instrument and dropped the dry, dust-colored passengers into water. Within minutes, their legs began to move. Most of the animals woke up. Many of them went on to lay eggs that hatched into healthy, normal offspring. These are tardigrades, and they are the only animals in the known history of life on this planet to have survived raw exposure to outer space. To understand how a creature outlasts astronauts, you have to look inside an ordinary clump of wet moss. Pour a cup of water through any patch of damp green and you will find them. They are 8-legged, soft-bodied, translucent animals, half a millimeter long. Biologists sometimes call them water bears for their slow, deliberate gait. They have been walking this way for at least 500 million years. They were here before the dinosaurs. They have lived through 5 planetary mass extinctions, eating algae, single-celled organisms, and sometimes each other. Yet for all that history, they are physically delicate. A single grain of sand can crush them. A bird can swallow 1,000 without noticing. Their ability to survive the void of space comes entirely from their internal chemistry. The greatest regular threat a tardigrade faces is not the vacuum of space, but the sudden disappearance of water. The puddle they live in simply dries up. When their environment becomes hostile, they do not flee and they do not die. They draw their legs into their body and shrink into a small, dry husk, entering a state called cryptobiosis. Biologists call this dry form a ton. Inside, there is no breathing and no heartbeat. The animal's metabolism falls so low that the most sensitive instruments cannot detect it. This diagram shows how they survive the dehydration process. As water drains out of their cells, it is replaced by a specialized sugar called trehalose. This sugar slips into the spaces where water used to be and locks the internal structure of the cells in place, creating a scaffolding made of glass. The cell walls are prevented from collapsing. Once locked in this state, they can sit in liquid helium at -270 degrees Celsius. They can be heated to 150 degrees or pressed at pressures 6 times greater than the bottom of the deepest ocean trench. In an Italian laboratory, a desiccated tardigrade was kept in a sealed jar for over 100 years in a botanical collection. When researchers added a single drop of water, a faint twitch was observed in one of the legs. This state creates a gap in the normal rules of biology. Instead of dying when conditions turn hostile, the animal simply pauses, waiting until the environment allows life to resume. Drying out into a ton solves the lack of water and air. It offers no protection against the cosmic radiation of outer space. Without an atmosphere to shield them, ultraviolet light and high-energy rays tear through cellular DNA the way a needle tears through silk. In 2016, researchers in a Japanese laboratory found the answer. They identified a protein inside the tardigrade that exists nowhere else in the natural world, Dsup, short for damage suppressor. Looking at this animation, we can see Dsup in action. The protein binds directly to the cell's DNA, wrapping itself around the coiled strands to form a physical, protective cloud. When radiation rips through the cell and produces hydroxyl radicals, hungry molecules that cut DNA into useless fragments, Dsup absorbs the impact. The DNA stays whole. A human being exposed to roughly 5 sieverts of radiation has a 50% chance of dying within 30 days. A tardigrade can tolerate doses approaching 5,000 grays, close to 1,000 times the lethal human limit. The result is a biochemical configuration so stable that the animal becomes structurally resistant to conditions that would shred the DNA of almost any other organism. In the years following the identification of these specific survival proteins, researchers began exploring if these mechanisms could function within other species. Researchers took the gene for Dsup and inserted it into an ordinary human cell grown in a dish. When they exposed that cell to X-rays, damage to its DNA was reduced by 40%. Now this single tardigrade protein is being studied as a potential shield for cancer patients undergoing intense radiation therapy, protecting their healthy tissues from the collateral damage of treatment. The same gene could eventually protect astronauts on long-duration missions to Mars, where cosmic radiation outside Earth's magnetic field poses a massive threat to the human body. Biotechnologists are also adapting the trallulose trick, the sugar that holds a dried tardigrade together, to preserve life-saving vaccines and blood products at room temperature, bypassing the need for constant cold-chain refrigeration. Crop scientists are exploring whether the genes that allow tardigrades to survive total desiccation could be added to staple plants, allowing certain cereal crops to survive a severe drought, exactly like a water bear survives an empty puddle. By studying how these animals pause and protect their own life, we are finding new ways to stabilize our own, offering a biological path forward for medicine, agriculture, and our future beyond Earth. You can fit 100 of them on the head of a pin. You walk past thousands of them every day. There are tardigrades on the skin of your eyebrow, in the dust of your home, and almost certainly on the screen you are watching right now. They do not survive through brute strength. They carry the inheritance of 500 million years of refusing to die, mastering the oldest survival tactic on Earth: how to stop completely and wait. If you found this story extraordinary, take a moment to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments which extreme survivor you want us to investigate next: the pistol shrimp, the transparent icefish, or the blind cave salamander. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, somewhere in a puddle just outside, a tiny water bear is walking, patient, quiet, and entirely unbothered by the end of the world.